Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I'm excited every week, but this is another week I'm really excited about, and I'm so grateful that Lenny and Vandy Singleton can be here and share their stories. I just have a couple of announcements to start with, and then we'll begin. So first of all, just remember that you have a response assignment due at the end of this presentation, and we're about 2/3 of the way through the semester. So if you have 2 of your 3 cultural events done, you're right on track. Most of you don't have 2 done, so this is a reminder. Try to get a cultural event done this week. In fact, you can see behind us that there's a stage set up. There's a musical event tonight here at 7:30, and if you were interested in Ellie Thompson's presentation earlier this semester, the Badger Creeds Club is having an event tonight at 6 o'clock in the GSC. It's called Food and Faith. So there'll be free food, and you can. It'll be tied into interfaith dialogue. Also, the art gallery in the Humanities Building has an exhibit that's opening up. It will be starting on Monday. You'll be able to go there anytime during the day and see an art exhibit, and that would count as well. I also wanted to remind you, or let you know, by the doors on your way out, you can pick up a little piece of paper. The business department and the entrepreneurship center are having, there's a competition. If you have an idea for an entrepreneurship opportunity, you can enter and win up to $2,000 for your idea. And any ideas you have, any information you want, it'll be on here. There's a QR code you can scan. And then finally, I want to just make sure you know that at the end of the presentation today, our speakers are going to be going over to the campus store. They have a book titled Love Conquers All, and they'll be selling copies, but they'll also be greeting people. And so if you have any questions or want to meet our presenters, you can come over to the campus store right after. But now, let me introduce our speakers. So Lenny and Vandy Singleton are published authors who've gone through the fires of life and have come through with a powerful testimony of perseverance and resilience. They're now motivational speakers who travel and share their lessons learned as they were both sentenced to death, but they're still here to tell about it. Lenny has his bachelor's degree in business from Langston University, and Vandy has a master's degree in administrative leadership from the University of Oklahoma. And they'll also tell you that their primary education came as a result of what they've been through. Vandy was diagnosed with stage 4 triple-negative breast cancer in 2013, and Lenny was sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 110 years in the Virginia State Prison. Vandy was told she had approximately 3 years to live, and Lenny was given a slow death sentence. Today, Vandy is cancer-free, and Lenny has been released from prison. And their focus is on the importance of thoughts. Lenny and Vandy say, our thoughts create our realities. In other words, where we are today is a result of what we've been thinking about consistently in days gone by. And we invite you today to share their amazing journey, reuniting after 28 years, discovering Vandy's cancer, learning about Lenny's path towards redemption, and their inspiring book, Love Conquers All, how love delivered her from cancer and him from prison. Their powerful testimony shares how they used their thoughts to get free of death and free from life in prison. What's truly amazing. They titled their book 4 years before any of that was true. So will you please join me in welcoming Lenny and Vandy Singleton.
Thanks, Dave. Hello, everyone. Vandy and I are so happy to be here. Let's try that again, honey.
Okay.
We are so happy to be here today. So, there is a huge reason why Vandy and I are happy to be here today. As David said, we were both given death sentences. She was diagnosed with stage 4 triple-negative breast cancer. The oncologist told her she had approximately 3 years to live. And as David mentioned, I was sentenced to a Virginia State prison with 2 life sentences and 110 years. So I was definitely scheduled to die there. Today, we want to share our journey with you. We want to share with you some of the miracles we received along the way. We also want to share with you what we've learned, some of the lessons and principles that we implemented to get us standing here today. And, most importantly, the importance of our thoughts.
Before we go into all of that, Lenny and I, our story actually begins way back in 1921, before either of us was born. And one of the worst race riots in U.S. history occurred then in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in an area called the Greenwood District, known then as Black Wall Street, because it was one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Tulsa. That event started because a young black man and a jar accidentally touched a young white woman when an elevator jarred. The Greenwood District was burnt to the ground, and the National Guard was called in to secure the area. Over 800 people were injured, and about 300 people were killed during that event. It was a horrendous event. Well, in the 1970s, the government created what was known as magnet schools. These were given extra funding by the government, and they were created to help in the desegregation of America.
That's right.
And the federal government funded 2 such schools in Tulsa, Carver Middle School and Booker T. Washington High School. You had to apply to be accepted at Booker T when we went. It was 45% black, 45% white, and 10% other. And Lenny and I would actually meet there at Booker T in 1984.
Yeah, we're a little old.
Everyone loved Lenny. Let me just start there. He just had that kind of personality that when you met him, you just knew he would go on to do something grand. He had so much potential, and everyone could see it. He was a star athlete and received a full academic scholarship upon graduating in 1985 to attend Langston University, where he earned his bachelor's in business administration with a minor in computer programming. He had eventually wanted to start his own business, but we kind of lost contact with one another when he went off to college. And eventually I learned that Lenny had gone on to join the Navy and had plans to kind of rise in the ranks and travel the world before he settled down and earn his master's while he was in the Navy. But life took a very different turn for him.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to go off kilter a little bit. David told me there are some football players in here. How many football players in the room? Okay. Heard you guys are pretty good, too. Well, Vandy did tell you, she said that my life took a different turn. And as you can see through the footage, I mean, life took a really different turn for me. I mean, that's really an understatement. No one, and I mean no one, including myself, thought that I would ever wind up in prison. I mean, you saw some of the things that we'd done, some of the things I've been through. So when I wound up in prison, it really did change the course of my life. When Vandy found me, I was being housed here at Nottoway Correctional Center in Burkeville, Virginia. Because of my horrible addiction to drugs, I went on a 1-week crime spree. I snatched money out of cash registers and ran out of the store. I didn't have a gun. I didn't hurt anybody. I was just really out of my mind. And some of you may have family members who have experienced drug addiction and what drug addiction can do. When I was finally apprehended, I admitted to the police and to the detectives everything I had done.
You thanked the officers.
I literally thanked the detective. I said, thank you, because I saw this as an opportunity to get myself together. I was so glad. I was so ashamed and unhappy with what I had done with my life. Life definitely hadn't gone the way I had planned. I had such high aspirations for myself. Like Vandy said, I had planned on starting my own business. Okay. Now, as a result of this 1-week crime spree, a judge in the state of Virginia sends me to 2 life sentences plus 110 years for stealing less than $550. I'd never been in trouble before, so never in a million years could I have imagined that a judge would sentence me to spend the rest of my natural life in prison. In 1995, the state of Virginia had abolished parole, so my only chance of being released was through a conditional pardon that had to be granted by the governor of Virginia. Up until that time, pardons were rarely given. So we were told that it would take a miracle for me to be released. So, you may be wondering how it is that I'm standing before you today. I mean, even my own parents. Now, this was amazing. They never told me this while I was incarcerated, but my own parents never believed that I would ever be released. They never believed it. The answer to that question is, I found purpose. I found purpose. And when you're only 19, 20, 21 years old, like many of you in this room, I know a lot of you are asking yourselves, what are you here for? What are you here to do? Well, when I was arrested, I immediately found out because within that first month of my incarceration, I found myself leading all types of groups. You know, I was older, I was 28 years old at that time, and I was more experienced than most of the guys in the city jail. I would eventually devote my life to helping others as an inmate leader in the church. And it's just kind of natural and normal, you know, when you're in those kinds of environments and those kinds of conditions, that people really do start searching for God or a higher being, or like I said, trying to find purpose. I remember one day I had this strong inclination that I needed to start working on my deliverance. I needed to start doing something to help me get released because I was spending all my time in the church, mentoring, and doing those kinds of things. So it took me 2 years before I finally decided to step off and do that. And the amazing thing that happened just 3 months later, after I followed that still small voice, 3 months later, my brother Lionel Maven, he's retired Air Force, he was living in Anchorage, Alaska, came to Virginia to see me because his uncle had passed away in D.C. Well, as a result of that visit, my brother built the Justice for Lenny webpage. He built a Facebook page. He started a committee that would meet on the phone every Sunday, and they would brainstorm about how we would get released. Well, it was that Facebook page that Vandy found that allowed her to find me. And when she found me, I mean, everything began to change. My angel had arrived.
I have been searching for Lenny for over 17 years, and especially with the advent of social media. Many people have asked me, including Lenny himself, why did you search for Lenny for so long? And we had math class together at Booker T. We sat right next to each other in math class. And he would carry my books to my next class for me. And
I was flirting, guys.
he was flirting, and we'd talk on the phone, and he loved to make me blush.
I still do today.
Yes, he does. One day while sitting in class, algebra class, he stood up and announced to everyone in the class, Vandy Hill, I just love you. And those words kind of stuck with me. Kind of stick with a person when somebody does that to you.
Yeah, and I got reprimanded by the math teacher,
You
too.
did. And of course, I never forgot that, and that's why I searched for him for so long. When I found Lenny on Facebook, at first I thought I was talking to him, not realizing his situation, but in actuality, I was talking to his brother Lionel.
He was acting like he was me, y'all.
Yeah. And when I finally figured out what had happened to Lenny and that I wasn't talking directly to Lenny, I was utterly devastated. I mean, I literally felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. And when I heard his sentence, 2 life sentences plus 110 years, my first thought, as probably many of you probably thought, it was, oh my God, how many people did Lenny kill, right?
I was asked that, too.
But he hadn't killed anyone.
Hadn't even heard anyone.
He hadn't even injured anyone. And so it was really hard for me to imagine Lenny in prison. You know, I remembered that boy that had declared his love for me in class. And I couldn't even imagine Lenny with an addiction, let alone, hurting anybody or being in prison. And, Lenny graduated about a year, like I said, about a year ahead of me. There we go. And we just kind of lost contact with one another. And I went on to earn my bachelor's in English from the University of Tulsa. And eventually I earned my master's in administrative leadership from the University of Oklahoma. In 2004, I moved to Utah to work for Snow College. Yes, I used to work here on the Richfield campus. And I had been looking for jobs in both Colorado and Utah because I wanted to live in the mountains. And as you can see, this is where we live. And I found a beautiful place to live about 2 miles from Fremont Indian State Park in Clear Creek Canyon. And while I loved where I lived, I was terribly unhappy. The spring before I found Lenny, I had prayed to God to return love to my life because I was just so unhappy. And I remember one day in my orchard, my kitties raced past me in their springtime zeal, and their joy stood in such sharp contrast to the emptiness and the pain that I was feeling. Emotionally, I was utterly drained. Mentally, I was exhausted. I was always saying, oh, good thing my head's screwed on straight, implying that if it wasn't, I'd go off and leave it somewhere, I'd forget it. Spiritually, I was lost. And physically, I was about 60 pounds overweight.
Right there.
Yeah. Once I found Lenny on Facebook and began catching him up over the past 28 years, I realized that I was in very bad shape and that I had to start doing something different, something in earnest. I knew it had to start with me, and so I began walking and making better food choices. And with Lenny's constant encouragement and many suggestions, I lost about 50 pounds in 4 months' time. So much weight that I was able to feel the lump in my left armpit. That lump turned out to be breast cancer. My oncologist ordered a PET scan after receiving the results of my lymph nodes that had been biopsied, and I was diagnosed with triple-negative breast cancer and the HER2 gene, which spreads cancer out into other parts of your body. And so after that, I was driving to Provo after my PET scan, that first PET scan. Mm-hmm. And my oncologist called me, and he said, Vandy, where are you? And I said, well, I'm almost to Provo. And he said, well, you need to go to the nearest emergency room. You need to go to Provo emergency room right now. And I was, of course, well, what's the deal? And he said, well, you have a cancerous tumor at the top of your spine, the base of your skull, threatening to paralyze you from the neck down. You need to go right now. And Vandy, by the way, this means that you're stage 4, incurable. And now, just if any of you plan to become doctors in the future, don't ever do that to somebody while they're driving down the highway. That's just a little side note there. I was, again, utterly devastated. But I ended up having back-to-back surgeries to remove the vertebrae with the tumor on it, replacing it with a metal plate, a cadaver finger bone, I know that's kind of weird, wires and screws. So now I can say my head's screwed on straight, right?
We were just looking at her x-rays.
Now I can actually say that. I had discovered the tumor in time to prevent the paralysis from the neck down and death. And even after removing the tumor, the doctor told me that most people with my diagnosis would only live about 3 years. And they were only talking to me about quality of life, thinking that I wouldn't live much longer. To date, I've had 8 surgeries, radiation, a year and a half of chemo. As I fought for my life, I continued to fight for Lenny's life.
She did.
So reuniting with him, when I did, created a true miracle in my life. I was headed towards paralysis and death. And our reunion allowed me to catch the cancer in time to prevent that. So now it was time in earnest to fight for Lenny's miracle. So we continued to write each other. And once again, I recognized the boy, now a man, that I had cared for so much. And I learned about the man he had become while in prison. He lived in the honors dorm for about 15 to 17 years, worked every day in a position of authority at Virginia Correctional Enterprises, making about 80 cents an hour, modern day slavery, I will say it. He had a leadership position in the church, like he said. He attended every workshop available to him to better himself. He also listens to self-help audio lessons, which he still does today.
Every morning.
He took care of himself and never asked anyone for anything. And during his entire time, 23 years of incarceration, he had never received a single infraction, meaning that he'd never gotten in trouble for a single thing, which is very rare for lifers that have no reason to be the best person that they can be. That very first day I reunited with Lenny, I signed his online petition, I wrote the governor of Virginia, and I wrote President Obama. He was the president at the time.
Okay. Now, what Vandy didn't tell you was this. When she first reached out to me, and we talk about that in the very beginning of our book, I received this pink sheet because inside the prison you can't get more mail than one stamp will allow you to receive. So they brought this pink sheet to my cell, and it had her name. It had Vandy Moore. Well, I've only met one Vandy in my whole life. And when I saw the state of Utah, I was like, Utah? I mean, let's be honest here. Let's just keep it real. I didn't know any black people in Utah. So I was like, Utah? So anyway, we started writing each other and catching each other up. And I was certainly surprised that she had been looking for me all those years. So when she found me, I had already been writing everybody. I mean, every organization. I would read the newspaper, and anybody who was talking about criminal justice reform or excessive sentencing, I would get an address and I would write them. Well, I soon found out that they didn't want to hear from somebody sitting in prison. I mean, most organizations, if you don't have someone on the outside who's advocating for you, they just don't particularly want to hear from you. And I learned that pretty quickly. Like she said, she was writing everybody. She wrote every person in Congress, every senator, every congressperson. She wrote President Obama. I mean, she was writing everybody. And that's what I really needed. I needed someone outside to bring attention to what was going on inside. Not only that, but she had created posters, hats, mugs, whatever she could put that information on. She put, what was it, Cafe Press on it? Mm-hmm. And it was just a means of trying to get the word out. Along the way, Vandy and I fell in love. We were just friends. We weren't looking to be in a relationship. Like she said, we were just catching each other up. And Vandy wound up coming all the way to Virginia from Utah, and we got married in the visitors' room on August 20th, 2015. That was one of the greatest days of my life. So I always tell Vandy this: she's my greatest gift. And not just because she was that advocate for me on the outside, but we both needed each other. We both needed that energy, that fuel, because she didn't know that she had cancer when she found it. And so, from those years of playing sports, guys, that energy, that fuel, Vandy, you got to start walking, you got to start eating better. We started reading books on why cancer arises anyway, and we just fueled each other. She was fueling me, I was fueling her, and here we are standing before you all today. She also, during that trip to Virginia, she went to this commission review board. How many people have ever heard of Governor Terry McAuliffe? He was a governor in Virginia. Well, anyway, he started this commission review board to evaluate whether it was cost effective or not to continue housing men and women in prison. Because like I said, Virginia has no parole system. So if you go to prison there, they're going to keep you for 85% of that time. Now, mind you, I had 2 lives in 110 years. So 85% of that is what? I'd have to die and come back several times in order to do that sentence. So she spoke before the Commission Review Board, before 30 people, which included senators, congressmen, citizens from the community, parole board members, and members of the governor's cabinet. So by that time, we'd also written and published our book that David was telling you about. Love Conquers All, How Love Delivered Her from Cancer and Him from Prison. The amazing thing is that we titled our book 4 years. Now listen to this. We titled our book 4 years before it was true. Think about that. 4 years before it was actually true, we titled it Love Conquers All. How Love Delivered Her from Cancer and Me from Prison. Our book shares the first few years of our journey up until we found our eventual lawyer, John A. Cottrell. It shares how I ended up in prison, and it shares Vandy discovering the cancer and going through much of her treatments. Today, it is a testament of blind faith to creating miracles, to the power of love, and what can happen if we just persevere and never give up. Vandy and I often read, that's John A. Cottrell, that's our lawyer, that's who we work with even today. You know, during that time, we read a lot of books together, and while we were reading this one book titled E Squared by Pam Grout, it shared an exercise on how to manifest your desires. And she said in this book to make a prayer or to state your desires and then give it 72 hours to manifest. Well, I personally didn't believe in testing God. I just don't believe in that. But I was desperate because we were looking for a lawyer to represent me. And so I did it. Well, right before those 72 hours was up, one of my fellow inmates called me to the laundry room one early Saturday morning, and he said, Lenny, you got to read this article, man. And in this article was about a young man who had been sentenced, now listen to this, 6 life sentences and 110 years, or 18 years, right? 6 life sentences and 118 years for a single house party robbery where no one was hurt. And he was like 15 years old. Well, we learned in that article that the lawyer's name was John A. Cottrell. Vandy had been calling lawyer after lawyer, and none of them would take my case. They all felt like I was a bum, a waste of time. They even told her if a lawyer takes your money, he's just taking, that's what he's doing, he's just taking your money because Lenny doesn't have a chance. Even her friends. When her friends found out that she was fighting for me, they were like, girl, are you crazy? That guy ain't getting out. You're wasting your time. And these are the kind of reports that we were getting while we were fighting so desperately. Not just for me, but for her as well. Then, one day when I called, I told her, I said, Vandy, you really need to call this guy. His name is John A. Cottrell. He's our lawyer. So Vandy called him, and unlike all the other lawyers, Mr. Cottrell told her that he was interested in my case. For one lawyer. So, she had been fighting so hard and for so long, and she was so happy to finally have a lawyer that would help us write our petition. Cog, Vandy, and I worked together and submitted my petition into the governor's office on December 22nd, 2015, the very same day that a man named Timothy Williams, a journalist from the New York Times, reached out to us. The same day. So we took that as a really good sign. Mr. Cottrell was so impressed with what we had done up to that point that he asked Vandy to help him with his other petitions. Mr. Cottrell, by far, is one of our biggest heroes. So much so that we ended our first book when we hired him. The John A. Cottrell Law Firm submitted 7 petitions before Governor McAuliffe left office, and 3 of those were granted, and the other 4 are still being reviewed today. And Vandy was blessed to have worked on all of them.
You know, when I first discovered Lenny, I thought it would be an easy thing. I mean, you know, he deserved some time, he did, for what he had done. But he didn't deserve 2 life sentences plus 110 years. That injustice, I thought I could make a few phone calls and clear it up.
Found out differently.
I found out differently, but as the years rolled by, I realized it wasn't going to be as easy as I thought. I wrote so many people. But after writing the book, finishing the petition, I kind of shifted my focus. And Lenny's brother was so busy running his own business and doing the Sunday phone conferences that I took over administering the social media aspect of everything. And to have things to post to the Facebook page, what I would do is I would search for articles on criminal justice reform, mass incarceration, excessive sentencing, drug addiction, anything that had anything remotely to do with Lenny's case. And I would scroll down to the end of the article, and in the comment section, I would leave a comment. And
She did that on everything.
I did this every day consistently for like 3 years. And then one day, I received notice that one of my comments had been seen or accepted, approved by the Marshall Project. The Marshall Project is an online advocacy group that focuses on criminal justice reform. And they don't readily just put your comments. Some newspapers and things like that, they'll just post your comments. But this one, you had to be approved. So I got notice that one of my comments had been approved. And 8 months later,
8 months.
Timothy Williams of the New York Times contacted us. That was the same day that the governor had received Lenny's petition in the governor's office. And so that article changed absolutely everything. I even saw, and it went on the front page on July 5th, right after the 4th of July, 2016.
Front page of the New York Times.
Front page of the New York Times. I'm sitting there. They came out and took photos of me, and I'm sitting there all sad.
In Utah.
In Utah. And so when Maris Badcock, she was a newscaster for WTKR, that's a CBS affiliate out of Norfolk, Virginia. She caught the newspaper article, and she actually aired a story on us, on Lenny. And we even got international attention for Lenny's case. They used Lenny's case as an example of why the war on drugs should end here in America. That summer they used that.
That's in Switzerland, right?
Yes, in Geneva, Switzerland. And so anyway, when the article came out, it was noticed by a man named Jason Flom.
That's right. Jason Flom, I think I was sharing with a couple of people before this event. He is the CEO of Lava Records. And I know a lot of you have heard of Katy Perry, right? Well, Jason Flom is the guy who founded her. He was an awardee of the Frederick Douglass Award, and he was awarded this by the Southern Center of Human Rights. He's also a founding board member on the Innocence Project. As a matter of fact, we're going to visit him in New York next week. We'll be at his beach house in the Hamptons, y'all. So it shows you how far we've come and how far we're going as a result of this. Anyway, Jason called this lady named Jenny Grenham in Virginia, who just happened to look up. She said, well, you want me to look you up? You want me to set up a meeting? And sure enough, she did. And Jason Flom and the governor of Virginia, as they tell us, smoked cigars and drank a little wine, and they talked about my case and several other cases. Governor McAuliffe was so surprised. He could not believe, and Jason told us this, he said he just kept saying over and over again, I cannot believe that guy is still sitting in prison for less than $550. First-time offender, pled guilty, admitted everything, wanted help, and 23 years later, he's still sitting in prison. And so, as a result of that meeting, I was pardoned in Governor McAuliffe's last 30 minutes in office. You can imagine how I was feeling during that time, right? His last 30 minutes in office, right before he left, he pardoned me and a couple other guys. So I was actually pardoned on January 12th, 2018, and I was released June 27th, 2018. So guys, I've only been out 16 months. I'm still learning how to use a cell phone, you guys. No, seriously. I mean, cell phones weren't even out when I was arrested in 1995. So this has been an amazing journey for me, learning so much. Thank God for my wonderful and amazing wife.
To be able to show the video.
The video's not gonna pop up? We wanted to show you some raw footage of me being released. They brought me around in a truck, and Vandy was standing out in front of the prison along with Jason Flom, John Cogshaw, and a friend of ours who flew all the way from Seattle, Washington. She bought this little old video camera, and she filmed us in the grocery store. She filmed me buying my first new outfit.
It's
Of course,
coming up.
after 23 years, you can imagine I put on some weight, got a little bigger, and I needed new clothes. So she followed us around, and I mean, it was just, for me, it's just so amazing. I was telling David outside today, for me, life is just totally different. You know, a lot of things that you all take for granted, fresh air, sunshine, being able to go to the store.
Go ahead. It's
go
gonna
to the
run.
mall. I love those kinds of things. I can sit right outside and just have a good time, just sitting on the bench. So let's see. Are we gonna get something?
Maybe. Just hit play.
That's Governor McAuliffe. This is Jason Flom. He's the CEO of Lava Records. That's Jenny Grenham, the lady by the governor. And if it goes,
It's kind of windy, but it's real and it's raw.
it is. This is the day I was released, you guys.
Oh, is that him? Yep, that's him.
Around. His wife all excited right here.
And I was walking back and forth as the truck kept moving.
Oh, is that him? Yep, that's him. Somebody was sitting back to that.
He's excited about it.
Probably gonna have to go back.
So, what's next?
Whatever you want. That's what's
John?
next. Whatever you want.
See you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Hello, hello.
Welcome back.
Hello, everybody.
We're trying to raise a rainbow for you. Coming in over there.
So, what's next? It's a good day.
Whatever you want. That's what's
John?
next. Whatever you
Good to
want.
see you. Good to see you. I'm trying to gather myself a little bit, so it's been a long time. Hello, hello.
Welcome back.
Hello, everybody.
We're trying to raise a rainbow for you. Should be coming in over there. Vandy
Dark
out of
clouds a
trouble
little
for
bit.
you.
It's a good day. Yeah. Thank you, John. So what do we?
Stand around the
Gather
ring.
myself a little bit.
You want some breakfast?
It's been a long time. We
You
can
only want
do.
to
I'm game for whatever.
Well, you have to. Stacy is your chauffeur.
Who's Stacy?
We're trying to keep Vandy out of trouble for you.
Mary. Yeah. So what do we? Thank you.
Stand around the ring. Yes, you want some breakfast?
We can do. I'm game for whatever.
Well, you have Stacy is your chauffeur.
Talking a lot in there. I was going to say
Right hand man.
All right. Miss Mary. I have a second chance to live life again. Me and my wife. We have some plans. It's surreal. I think it's probably going to hit me later. I'm talking a lot in there. But I'm just happy. I wish I was
That
reacting.
gives you an idea.
Get my feet on. And I have a second chance to live life again. Me and my wife.
I just can't imagine
We
you're
have
here.
some plans. Talk to the councils. Hopefully they'll give me an opportunity to come back into the region.
It kind of gives you an idea.
Can you imagine, guys, 23 years later?
And if you wanted to watch the entire thing, it's like 40 minutes. That's why we didn't do that
Exactly.
today. But you can go on our YouTube channel. Just type in Lenny Singleton, it will come up. And you can see the whole thing, the whole 20 minutes, plus lots of other
videos on our YouTube
videos
channel. Yeah.
on our YouTube channel. So where are we at today? Today, we are both standing here together. And that's pretty amazing considering both of us were given death sentences, stage 4 cancer, and 2 life sentences plus 110 years.
Not supposed to be here.
Not supposed to be here. Like he said earlier, as of my last PET scan, I was given a clean bill of health. My oncologist said, I don't know how you've done it or what you've done. I keep telling the man that I'm his miracle. And
he said, her oncologist, she's not supposed to be here.
Yeah. And so, it's pretty, he's like, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it.
That's right. That's right.
So I am definitely going to do that. But we learned a lot of lessons that we wanted to share with you today, but we're running out of time. So we're going to go through these really fast and only touch on a few of them. Okay. So one of the things that we talk about is you must think, speak, and act congruently and consistently.
Yes.
This is any time you want to manifest something for yourself. So for me, it was, I want to be a healthy human being, right? I can't just say that. I can't just think that. I had to actually do something. So, and another thing I learned that, you have to have those affirmations readily available to yourself. So every time, as you can imagine, somebody diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, your thoughts might go a little dark here and there. And I would literally have to say, stop, and then go to the place of what I wanted to see, what I wanted to happen. I am a healthy human being. I am completely healed of cancer, cured of cancer.
She did that every day, you guys.
I still do it, in fact.
Even today.
Even today. Yeah. So it's really important that you think, speak, and act towards whatever it is you want to manifest. Right. I don't care what it is, whether it's getting somebody out of prison, whether it's curing stage 4 cancer, whatever it is, you have to think it, you have to speak it, you have to be it.
Work towards it.
Work towards it.
And what ties in even more so with that is this. How was I able, and the New York Times and everybody I talked to today, they said, Lenny, how did you maintain over that long period of time? And like Vandy mentioned to you, I listened to self-help videos. I read tons of books. And all of those books talked about how our thoughts create our reality, what you think about and talk about. Those things eventually wind up in your life. And I truly believe that the reason Vandy and I are standing here today is because we were always directing our thoughts in the direction we wanted them to go.
Always.
We were reading books that had to do with good health, how to overcome cancer. And my mindset was, I'm not going to die in this prison. And so I just kept fueling my thoughts, and I spent time around people who were fueling my thoughts. We fueled each other's thoughts. And I wasn't the only one who was released. The guys who were released with me that I knew, that we formed these communities inside those walls, all of them are out doing well. One of my other buddies just graduated from Columbia University with his master's degree after doing 24 years in prison. So it's not about location. It's about what you believe and what you think and what you want to manifest in your life. We've got to believe it, we've got to talk about it, and we've got to work towards it.
I'm going to go through some of these really quick because, like I said, we're running out of time. Mm-hmm. I am is how we connect to that divinity part of ourselves.
That's what we believe.
So anytime you use that phrase, you need to use it mindfully. So in other words, I am a healthy human being. I can't go around saying I'm unhealthy, I'm sick.
Or I'm stupid, I'm dumb.
Or I'm stupid, or I'm dumb, or I can't do this. Or it's always got to be what you want.
Yes. I
am a photographer. I am an artist. I am whatever it is. Start speaking that truth, and the divinity within you is going to help you get there. The other thing is we learned is the power of associations.
Spend time with good people, quality people, young folks.
If you look around and everybody around you is doing things that you shouldn't be doing, you shouldn't be with those people anymore.
That's how I wound up in my shoes. I don't fault the people I associated with. Those were my choices, but I was horrible at choosing my friends.
Choose wisely. Live now, be in love now, be happy right now, have peace right now. Now is your only moment, and it colors
Right now.
all the rest of your moments. So how you're thinking right now, this very minute, is going to determine tomorrow and the next day and the next day.
Absolutely.
So always be happy and always be in love and be in joy and be in peace right now. Another thing that we learned, life is a gift. And we are all given such tremendous things, elements in our lives that nobody can take from you. Nobody can take your time away from you.
Every one of you have a gift and talent.
All of you have something that you're good at. All of you have time here on earth and opportunity here on earth, plus the earth itself.
Take
and all
advantage of it, folks.
Variety. One of our sayings is that abundance is our natural state of being. And we truly believe that. Treat, and this one hits home for me, treat everyone you meet with compassion and love.
Imagine if I treated her bad in high school, folks.
Yeah, he'd still be in prison and I'd be
Imagine if
dead.
I didn't treat her. Yeah.
And that's twofold, because he would still be in prison and I would be dead right now. So treat everyone you meet, because you never know what they might mean to you.
That's right.
Please buy our book.
You'll love it, folks.
You will.
You'll love it.
It is our letters back and forth, so it's very personal and very private.
It's like journal.
Yeah, it's like reading somebody's diary. Visit our website if you want to get more of these lessons or go into further detail, lennyvandy.org.
We've got a bunch of cards we can give you guys if you like.
Yeah, and it shares all of our truths, both on a spiritual level as well as on a religious level.
Yes.
So however you want to get there. So anyway.
Amen. Today, Vandy and I just want to thank you all for allowing us to be here. We want to thank you for spending time to come out. We know you've got another class. They have to leave at 1:20, right, David?
Yeah.
When we said we're happy to be here,
We really
mean it, guys. We're just so excited about life, about being here, about having this opportunity to share with you all. So thank you so much. We'll be in the bookstore. If you guys want to come and ask us some questions, because I know we don't have time, come on by, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.